All right, for the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and get us moving, and folks that come in can come in. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Riley Stewart. I'm an assistant dean over at Reed College, and I'll be moderating today's West Coast Perspective panel. In a moment, I'll have our panelists introduce themselves, but I want to give a brief run of show before that. This will run from 5 until around 5:45. We do need to be sharp with time because we have another webinar that needs this Zoom link right after us. I will have our panelists introduce themselves. I'll get the ball rolling with a couple of questions, and then I will turn it over to you all, attendees, to ask questions using the Q&A feature. And so that is what I will be monitoring. I will do my best to monitor the chat at the same time, but the Q&A feature would be much preferred. And as a reminder, this session today is to ask questions about being a student at Reed from the West Coast perspective. So I will be moderating questions that are not super appropriate as well for today. I'm also recording. This will eventually go up on our YouTube channel, and I have it set up just where we can see our speakers. So I want to make everyone aware of that as well. With that said, I'm hopeful that our fantastic panelists can go around and say maybe where you're from, what year you are at Reed, or if you've graduated from Reed, and then what you studied at Reed.
I'll go first, then I'll popcorn around. My name is Andrew. I'm a sophomore political science major and economics minor here. So current student. And I'm originally from Pasadena, California. So around LA. And I hope I touched on everything Riley asked for. And I will popcorn to Vincent.
Hi, my name is Vincent. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a sophomore here at Reed. My major is history and literature, and I'm originally from the Bay Area, specifically the East Bay in California. And I'll popcorn Maya.
Hi, my name is Maya. I use she, they pronouns. I'm a senior theater major and I'm from Santa Cruz, California, so just south of the Bay Area. Um, did I hit everything? I think
Yes,
so.
perfect.
Okay, and then I'll popcorn to Bonti.
Hi, I'm Vanti. I'm one of the recent alums. I graduated from Reed last May. I use she, they pronouns. I was a neuroscience major and I am from Portland, Oregon. I grew up around like 30, 40 minutes away from Reed.
Thanks, y'all. I'm wondering if we can get the ball rolling and continue with popcorn style. That's brilliant, Andrew. Thank you. If each of y'all could maybe say or describe your path to Reed. So, what were you looking for in colleges, and why did you ultimately choose Reed?
I'm happy to start with that one. So I was looking at mostly liberal arts schools. In high school, I was really interested in the discussion-based kind of style of classes. And I'd actually never heard of Reed until my dad mentioned it to me. Apparently, he had applied when he was going to college, but he didn't get in. So this was kind of his like way of maybe living vicariously through me. But he told me that from what he knew about it, it seemed to match my personality. We're very close, so he knows me very well. And I think he was right because the more I looked into the school, the more I was kind of just very excited by all the opportunities here, especially yeah the style of academics, the de-emphasis on grades, the kind of history of kind of political activism and social change has been really cool. And yeah, I was also, I mean, being from California, I always loved the rain. And so then I was kind of excited by the prospect of maybe moving somewhere where it rains more often. So that was kind of like, I was a little bit geographically based, but it was mostly, I was interested in the type of academics that Reed has. And I will popcorn to Andrew.
Yeah, so strangely enough, it was my stepdad that first mentioned Reed, so we're beginning a trend here. But it was interesting because I did not want to go too far from home. Originally, I'm from California, and so everything I was interested in was like California public schools at first. I did send in an application to some schools in Oregon, only a couple. It included to read at first because my stepdad is, if you can think of like a Francophile, he's that, but for Portland. So he's like very like into the Pacific Northwest, which is weird because dude's from like Pennsylvania and then California. But um he mentioned it, and I would say it was something similar to mine that it was like he wanted to go somewhere like Reed, and so he like was like, "Oh, have you heard of Reed College?" The funny thing was that came up around application times. We'd actually visited Reed though when I was in the fifth grade. The only thing I remember here is our bouncy bridge and our squash courts. My family's big squash people. So I did send in the application after it kind of hit all the boxes for me. It was very unique. It matched what I wanted in school. It had somewhere that was passionate about learning, but not so much about, hyping up grades and learning for grades, but rather learning because you're interested in it. And so there was this aha moment before I got my decision back though, where I was like, I think I could go far from home. I think I would like it. I think I would like to try doing something independently. And so it ended up working out that Reed was far enough away from home where I kind of still got to live independently, but still, I'm still on the same coast, I'm still in the same time zone. So being able to, not schedule calls with family, I can call whenever I'm awake because they'll be awake. I can call really anytime and feel like I'm on the same like area of America, even though I'm really like 1,000 miles from home. That was all great. So yeah, I will popcorn Devonti.
Yeah, I found out the Reed because through a family friend, he used to be a math professor at Reed, and he would always tell these great stories about it. And I grew up going to like a really small school, and so I knew I'd thrive in like a smaller school environment. And for me at the time, research was really important, and the emphasis of students being the ones to lead in research versus like having to fight over the response with grad students was really important for me. And since my time at Reed, I was able to join a few labs, and then honestly, going to like a read and midday really solidified it for me because being in person, shadowing a Human 10 class, and seeing what the read community and culture was like made it so much more vibrant for me where it's like, okay, it's checking all of my boxes. And it felt like a place where I could be academically pushed, but also supported at the same time. And it was nice that I also was like, I graduated high school 2020. So it was nice that I could be close to home given all of the circumstances as well. And I'll pass it over to Vincent.
I have a bit of a similar experience in that I was really drawn to the idea of a liberal arts college education, and that was something I was really looking for in schools, as well as staying in the Pacific Northwest area because I wanted to be able to get a bit of distance from home while still being kind of like on the same coast in that respect. So we really met a lot of those kind of criteria for me. It was one of the schools that I was really strongly considering. But what really cemented it for me that this was a place that I really wanted to be was actually being able to come and tour Reed in person. So I felt like I was really able to get a sense of what the size of the school and the location was like. And that was a really big factor for me as well because Reed is about the same size as my high school was. So that felt like a very familiar thing and something that I wanted to keep as I was transitioning into college. But really, one of the standout things for me that I was really able to see when coming here and touring was just really getting a sense of the type of community that Reed has through things like not only just being able to walk around the campus and see people everywhere, but also just like picking up on little bits of the campus culture, even from an outsider. Things like reading a copy of the newspaper The Quest and just seeing the sense of like community and traditions that really seemed to be going on, and that felt like somewhere that I could really see myself fitting in socially, in addition to those like academic and geographic factors that were also being met for me as well by what I saw of Reed.
Thanks, y'all. I know in our audience today we have quite a few folks that are from California. So I'm wondering if our California Reed students can perhaps talk a little bit about the transition from where you were located in California to being in Portland and being at Reed.
So I was always told, growing up, I think there's a lot of connection between Portland and Santa Cruz in particular. I don't know if anybody participating today knows anything about Santa Cruz or its culture or anything like that, but I was always I had the sense that Portland and Santa Cruz were almost like sister cities in a way. Santa Cruz is definitely smaller, but I always kind of imagined Portland as like a lot of the culture is similar. Which was definitely factored into my decision because, of course, like I think moving anywhere, but especially moving out of the state, I was definitely nervous about like kind of some of that culture shock, and just kind of getting adjusted to life here. So it kind of drew me in the idea that like some of it is kind of similar. And I have kind of had that experience, I think, in a lot of the ways that, especially where Reed is located in the broader Portland area. I like to think of Portland as a collection of suburbs rather than like one big city. Like we do have a downtown, but I'm honestly not there very often. And I think a lot of the like smaller suburbs that we have around here, they have really great like shopping districts. They have really great like restaurants and kind of things like that. And that kind of layout definitely reminded me of home. So that was really nice. But I think other than that, like the weather was kind of a bit of a shock to me. But I think it was nice to move somewhere where it's not too far, but it's just far enough that there's some new things for me to explore and some new culture and weather to get adjusted to. So
Yeah, Maya, I really want to kind of second your point about Reed's location kind of feeling like a suburb, even though it is within a big city. Because coming from the Bay Area and being in a suburb at home myself, at first I did feel like it was going to be a bit of a challenge to be like living in a larger city and kind of how would I get around, things like that. But I have definitely found that due to where Reed is located, it's really easy to get to like most of the places that I want to go to, even though it is in more of a kind of residential zone within the larger city. So I think that was something that felt like it was a pretty easy transition for me. But I do also agree that the culture of Portland is quite similar to the general culture of the Bay Area where I'm coming from. So I didn't feel like there was a lot of adjustment in that regard. And yeah, I think in a lot of ways, Reed has been like a pretty smooth transition and pretty close to what I've been used to at home.
Um, yeah, I would say a man from Pasadena, pretty much a suburb of LA. I would say that for me, it was definitely seemingly a bigger difference than somewhere more in Central Cali, but um, it definitely feels here like we are. I can't personally, I can never imagine living in a smaller place than Portland. I think like growing up in LA, Portland already feels much smaller, but in a good way. I think that LA to me was really big and overwhelming. And I think it has a pretty different culture from Portland, and so it wasn't something to get used to, but I absolutely adore it. I am intending on staying in the Pacific Northwest once I graduate, very likely Portland. Um, I think I think it was different. I think just having by nature being this smaller city than LA, it was interesting to find things to do that aren't just like you know, events that are specifically going on. So finding things just to do in like the little suburbs, like going thrifting or just trying new places to eat, to really put yourself out there beside like just having events thrown at your face as you might be in LA. It was definitely something to get used to, but I absolutely adore everything I found so far. Um, I think weather was a big change to me. SoCal's definitely a billion times more sunny. The thing is, the way I put it is I love the sun in Portland a lot more because not having sun sometimes makes the sunny days just absolutely wonderful here. The sun peeped out today, it's still out right now. And so to get to sit on our quad or in front of Commons and just soak up some sun, oh, there you go. See, it's gorgeous. But it's just a much better experience than having, 90-degree sun on you every day. So I found the transition just something to be appreciated. And I would say the thing is Portland has a lot of rainy days, but not much rain. It's very misty, like very light rain. And so like I'd say the top like 20 hardest rains I've ever experienced are definitely like in SoCal and not even close to Portland. So the weather it wasn't all that, I guess. Yeah.
Thank you. Vonti, as our Oregonian on the panel, I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about what it was like going to a school that was close to home.
It's interesting that you guys all said that. Like, I agree that where Reed is like residential, but for me, I grew up in the suburbs. So seeing, I guess, coming to like the other side of the river felt like I was like in the big city in some ways, for me at least. Like, you drive down Central East Side and like, oh, this is like completely new. And so, like, for me, it was like a big change, at least because I hadn't explored much of outside of that. And I really liked Maya's point of how like neighborhoody these places are, because I feel like Portland is great because there's just like tons of pockets. Like, if I want to go out for music and drinks, I like to go out onto Belmont. If I want to go like do some thrifting, I go on to Division. If I want to hit up Powell's real quickly, I'll go to Hawthorne. And you can just take the 75 to like get to all of those places, which I think is great. And I think you have a lot of like public transport accessibility through Reed. So you don't necessarily need a car. And I felt like I would go home. Like, honestly, I didn't really go home a lot during when I was in school, to even though I was in such close proximity. I think I've only gone back home more since I've graduated. Um, but I felt like I found different parts to explore in different parts of my personality within the city, that I felt like it was always new and something's changing. And like you would be able to go on Grey Fund events through the school and like go to a Blazers game or a soccer game, or to have like some sort of outdoors activity where it's like I felt like I was still discovering new things that I didn't get the chance to do, that I really liked in like a completely new setting. And so I really liked the residential, but also like city-esque aspect of like where Reed is located. And I didn't really feel, it felt like a bigger change to me than like perhaps moving to like a different city. So at least that's like what it's like now. And so like I don't know, post grad, it's like, oh, I know where everything is and it's great.
That's fantastic. That's also very relatable to me about I grew up in a suburb quite close to yours in Portland, feeling like a different world is quite similar to my experience. So I appreciate your answer. I have one more question for y'all before I kick it over to our participants. And I'm wondering if you can each identify one highlight from your academic time at Reed and one highlight from your social time while at Reed.
I see some thinky faces, which means I will go first. Um, I would say my highlight academically at Reed has been this one class that I took. I hate science. I'll be one to say I don't like science. I am a political science major, and the science in that is like so fake in my opinion. Um, but I am required to take a lab here, as well as a STEM requirement, for general education. And so that is part of the liberal arts education that I signed up for. But the class that I took to fulfill my lab requirement, it was an intro bio class. It was called Lichens of the Pacific Northwest. Um, that was interestingly enough a class that taught like probably that taught me the most at Reed, despite, and I can acknowledge that even though I hate science. It was it was also just something that I never thought I'd ever be learning about. If you didn't know, lichens are like a little algal fungal mutation. It was just so cool to like learn about something and feel like there wasn't so much pressure to learn about it because it's outside of my major. It had very low stakes to learn about. And so it just felt like I was very free to do that. But that class was just amazing because it wasn't really bound to the classroom. We were in our canyon a lot. We were around campus. We were finding lichens and studying trees. I now know more species of trees on this campus than I wish I did. But I will also say that they did we did a lot of excursions on that in that class. We got to go tree climbing, which was so sick. We were able to tree climb and at this farm in Oregon City and find lichens at the top of trees. We were able to walk through forests in Washington. So I don't know, there was this like moment where I was sitting in the top of a tree and I was just like I'm like, this is like part of like college. Like I'm not even on campus right now, and I'm like learning just by, you know, getting to be in a school that's in the Pacific Northwest. And so I don't know, that was by far the sickest class I've had. I give tours here at Reed, and so I shout that class out all the time in my tours. It was an amazing class. So to get to learn about something that felt like so low pressure and get to do in such a cool way was just amazing. Socially, I would say I was an athlete growing up. I swam for a while. And it's very weird because Reed is not known to be a sporty school at all. But we do have them. There are people here. And so now I play ultimate frisbee, and it is such a nice transition because I think the sports that we have at Reed really emphasize growth and having fun over just like straight out competition. I would like to shout out we're not slacks. We got third in sectionals in the Pacific Northwest last year, so we're not slacks. But the amount of friends I made through there was really interesting because at first it was just like a place that felt like um it was just a bunch of people that were having fun, but it didn't feel like I could fit in. But that was really just because I was a first semester freshman. Like as soon as I like played for a month, I felt like I like was making friends there. And now like of my close friends, most of them are through Ultimate Frisbee. And so I don't know. I think it's very beautiful to look back and see that like this institutional like group actually like changed my social life here at Reed because a lot of the people there I don't know if I can get through the hard nights of homework or anything like that without them. So um that's I very much appreciate. And I'll do I have to popcorn to someone? Am I forcing someone? Maya, you can go.
All right. I would say both of these are somewhat relatively recent, I would say, but highlight of my academic career was definitely I'm working on my thesis right now, which is the thing that all seniors have to do to graduate. And as a theater student, my thesis was to put on a production. So I'm interested in directing. I have to write a whole thing about it too, but the main focus of it was getting to put on a production and yeah, get to cast it and everything and run rehearsals. And that actually just wrapped at the beginning of last month. And I think just like it felt so good. Like it ran for just a weekend, but the performances were so successful and we had such a great turnout and it was a comedy show, so everybody was laughing. And I think just like having all my friends and family come to see it and all these like people that I've seen in classes like, a couple of years ago, come to like support the actors and the crew and myself was just really, really cool. And also just like doing such a cool project like that and having so much agency over it while also knowing that this is like an academic requirement, like it's kind of almost reflecting what Andrew said about like kind of really hands-on work. Like it's not just like, okay, write this thing, take this test, it's very it tests us in other ways, which I think is just so cool. So that was definitely my kind of biggest academic highlight. Social highlight, I was thinking about this murder mystery party one of my friends threw. I think it was last year sometime. And it was themed. There was like he like made a whole script for it. It was really, really cool, but it was like themed with different TV shows. So like there were different characters like from like different sitcoms and stuff. And I went as somebody from Arrested Development, and one of my other friends went as Tobias from Arrested Development and like painted herself blue and like it was all part of the story too. And we like rented a room in Volum to like have this event at and like just like how elaborate it was and like getting my whole friend group together plus like some of my friends who I hadn't met like all together in a room to like play this game just because one of my friends was like thought it would be a cool idea and like was interested. It was so fun and it was definitely I think about it all the time and really helped me like bond with some of the people I didn't know that well. So I reflect very fondly on it because it was so much fun. And I will popcorn it to Vonti.
Think both you and Andrew took two of the things I was going to talk about actually. But I'll start with my favorite social memory. My favorite social memory was I used to be Reed's soccer manager, and so I got to like throw like tailgates or little events and like bring Capri Suns to stuff. And I think my favorite moment was organizing their like spring soccer tournament and like grilling like sausages like on the soccer lawn and like driving my car onto the field and like having fun with all my friends and like organizing this big tournament. Because I think as Andrew was saying, like having that like collaborative, like but fun and sporty experience at like a small school like Reed especially is nice to like take a load off of like the academics like stress as well. And so it was also like a lot of my friends were on the team. So it was just like a very like fun, wholesome moment. And it was a great day and everyone like got like matching shirts if they won and like a really like kitschy trophy. So I hold that memory very dearly. And I'm not a big humanities person because I think writing has always been a little bit of a struggle for me because I think science writing is very different than humanities writing. But my sophomore year, I took a Spanish Baroque art literature class in translation. It was a 3-hour conference once a week. And it was honestly one of my favorite classes that I took. The professor is amazing. But it made me think about like literature that I wouldn't have had the chance to read, like reading like Don Quixote and watching all of these like paintings and like talking about them and discussing them. And I wouldn't have thought of myself to talk about art at such a caliber. But being able to engage with my peers who are also taking it for like a Spanish credit and things like that was like a really fun class. And the thing I really liked about being a better writer at Reed was all of the feedback that I'd get. So it wouldn't be about like a punctuation thing or like grammar, but more so about developing my ideas and thinking more nuanced and like holistically and maybe about something that I hadn't thought about or being more argumentative in my papers. And so I really liked having that aspect because now, for given my science background, I'm able to think about what are all of the arguments in like science and like thinking about it more in a nuanced perspective. So that was like my favorite like academic class, but thesis is also like great. Like once you finish that thing, like it's fantastic. But I'll pass it over to Vincent.
Yeah, I think for my academic highlight, I'll talk about something that actually like just happened, which is that I submitted my major proposal because as a sophomore in an interdisciplinary major with history literature, that's something that I have to do, basically outlining like what I've done so far in terms of working towards my thesis and like what plans I have for the future. And that was something that it was really cool to just write and be able to figure out like, oh, I actually have done all of this work in my subject area, even though it's just my sophomore year. And being able to make those connections between different classes that I was taking, like with history classes, English classes, things like that, all going towards this kind of bigger program of study. It's just made me feel really excited for the work that I have ahead of me in the coming years. So that was the thing that happened recently that just made me feel good about where I am academically. But when it comes to the social element, I think for me, one of the standout things has been being on our mock trial team, which is a like competitive mock trial organization where we're able to compete against other schools, local schools at tournaments throughout the area. And this is a place where I've just met so many great people and made so many lasting friendships. Even though before coming to Reed, I had absolutely no experience with mock trial. I had really no idea what it was, but I just showed up to a meeting in my freshman year, and basically, like I've just never looked back. I've just met so many super welcoming people, and I've felt like I've been really able to grow as a person, as a public speaker, at the same time that I'm meeting all of these great people and making all of these connections that are still with me to this day.
Thanks, y'all. I feel like whenever I ask that question, I want to go back and be a student again. So thanks, y'all, for your answer. I am going to start getting us through our Q&A portion. For our panelists, you do not all need to answer the questions unless you have something to add or you all really want to talk. I'm fine with however you all want to approach this. The first question I see is curious about what the academic workload is like. So I'm wondering if someone feels comfortable talking about work-life balance at Reed.
Yeah, I think I can just speak for myself and say that it's true that Reed does have a pretty sizable academic workload. I do end up most days, like for at least some amount of time, doing work for my classes, and that's something that I really do have to factor in my schedule. And there is kind of like a constant presence of like I'm usually doing something academically, so that's definitely very true. But at the same time, I feel like I am able to be involved in my social life as well as with extracurriculars at the same time. And it is definitely a very possible thing as long as I'm kind of on top of my work-life balance and really focusing on how I'm scheduling my time to make sure that I'm able to prioritize all of the things that I both want to do and that I also need to do at the same time. So while the academic workload is definitely very real, I still feel like I am able to be able to commit to other things at the same time. And whenever possible, trying to bring the academic and the social parts together by doing things like studying with my friends, going to cafes and things like that, just to be able to get my work done, but at the same time, feel like I am still staying involved with my friends and keeping up in that way.
Yeah, maybe also to like add on, at least with my experience, like doing neuroscience, like not only do you have like your science classes, but you also have lab and maybe seminars if you need or lab lecture. And so being able to properly schedule your time out, like through Google Calendar or any like time management needs, I think especially early on is really, really important. So you can do the things that interest you and that you can have like a life outside of just your academics and like I think that was something that I struggled with a little earlier on because when I started during the pandemic, I think I had no sense of time, but I was able to slowly like adjust to that. And also, I felt like once I started, I had to relearn how to read in a way with all of like the heavy like text that we would start in like Key 110. And so I think being able to learn how I learn and how I digest information was really helpful to help me like succeed later on and help me get the most out of my classes and to know how to navigate like a conference later on or like what to ask in office hours later. So like Google Calendar is your best friend.
Thanks, y'all. It looks like we have a couple of questions about club culture at Reed. So I'm curious if anyone can elaborate on maybe how clubs get started at Reed, kind of the variety of clubs, and then perhaps relatedly, but we can always circle back. We have a question about the sports clubs. So are they all play or do folks try out? How does that work?
Can jump in on that one. So yeah, I think something that I noticed, especially my first year, is that we have a lot of different clubs here, coming from a lot of different like interests, and I think that has to do with the fact that it's pretty easy to start a club. I have never started a club, so I don't know this process super well. If anybody else does, feel free to jump in, but I know that like it's pretty easy to start a club and then you can get funding from the student body to kind of, buy snacks and supplies and pay for trips and stuff like that for your club. A couple clubs that we have we have cheese club and I think we had milk club at some point. I think there was like a pickle appreciation club. So we have like food and culinary ones. We definitely have a lot of affinity based groups. So we have the queer student union, we have the Black student union, um, Latino student union. We have a lot of, yeah, kind of like racial and ethnic kind of based, kind of community based clubs. And then we have like sports too. So on that sports front, I don't believe any of the sports team that we have, you have to try out to get into. I think it's kind of all play. I know that we have like rugby club and soccer club are pretty popular. And then we have a couple like softball teams which do something at the end of the year all together. And then what else? I mean, it's really like people again, because people can start clubs for pretty much anything they want. I'll often see posters for like join our club, that are like I wouldn't even have imagined that this would be something that you could have a club about, but people have them. I also know that we have pretty recently a new K-pop dance club, which has been consistently gaining members since it started, and they like now participate in like the winter dance concert and things like that, officially with the school too. So yeah, I think pretty much anything that you are interested in or want to organize around. We also have a lot of like social justice clubs, which kind of keep our activism culture on campus thriving, which I really appreciate. Yeah, does that kind of seem to cover it? Does anyone else want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I wanted to shout out that I somehow, after the end of my freshman year, ended up on leadership for three clubs. I'll say it is the process takes a second to get used to, but it is like pretty easy to navigate. There are people who will absolutely like pass on the ropes and like help you navigate that. I've yet to start my own club. All of them were ones I took over. Oh, that sounds like it was a peaceful transfer of power. But no hostile takeover. It was they graduated. Um, But I would say that it is relatively easy. I did find out recently, I kind of here at Reed, we like to preach student autonomy. It's mostly over our funds, that our funds come directly from the student body to a large pool of money that clubs take from directly, allocated by our treasury. Um, but I didn't really understand how it could be any other process. I did recently find out that other schools typically do have to get a lot of stamps by administration on a lot of things, to spend money. They have to they have to get a lot of sign-offs on it. I read that is really not the case. Once clubs are given their amount of money, they are pretty much given a lot of reign over how they use that. And so I would guess over my time in club leadership, I've probably spent about 10 to $15,000. So we do have like relative, and the process for me, like running events, is very much me and my co-leaders doing it. I really never have to ask anyone in administration for anything. So it is very a student-led process. So starting a club, I think that fast forwards a lot of it and becomes much easier to read than most schools.
One of the clubs that got reinstated like post-pandemic was like the yearbook club. One of my friends started it. She like graduated. She was the year above me. And so it was just like essentially like a yearbook for like the graduating seniors. It talked about their thesis. And this past year for my year when I graduated, they had a lot more funding for it and they had more like people to do photographs and like being able to get like a nice senior photo that you can, if you want to use on your LinkedIn, like go for it. And I think that was like a nice tradition that was like brought back, and it's like all done with like student art and like really funny nominations, like who most likely to become like a Reed professor or like the next Steve Jobs, things like that. So I think there's also like a renaissance of clubs that are also coming back like post-pandemic, which I think is great.
Thanks, y'all. I'm curious, so I have a question about students who live within driving distance. Do you tend to keep a car if you are from the West Coast? What was your experience, either if you have a car or perhaps if you did not?
Uh,
Go ahead.
Oh, I didn't take my car until like my senior year of college. And even though I lived off campus, I previously walked, but once I got my car, I realized it was very nice having my car, for like grocery shopping and things like that, or like going on trips like to the coast or to Mount Hood or like into the desert. So it's definitely nice, but I don't think it's like a necessity. Parking is free on campus, which is nice, like compared to other universities. And there's always like a community safety officers like going around like the parking lots and things like that to make sure like nothing happens. But it's definitely convenient, but not necessary. And there's usually someone who has a car. So if you need like a ride from the airport or something like that, then you can definitely find someone pretty easily.
Yeah, my experience is pretty much similar to that. I didn't have a car for just one semester here, so I've had one on campus since, but I really appreciate the free parking, especially because I know that's very much not the case at most other schools. But yeah, I found that it was helpful to have a car, honestly, for making friends, especially my freshman year. Like people, I lived in a pretty small dorm my freshman year, so pretty soon people started to know me as a person who had a car. So oftentimes they'd be like, "Hey, I need a ride to the airport," and I'm like, "Okay, well, buy me dinner first." But it was kind of a good like way to make friends and kind of be helpful to people. And then of course, yeah, super helpful for getting to maybe the parts of Portland that are a little bit more spread out. We do have a bit of a sprawl as a city, so it might be kind of hard to get to some of those corners. But overall, yeah, I would definitely echo the sentiment of like it's nice, but it's not necessarily necessary. It's also good for me. I'm about a 10 to 12 hour drive from home. And I usually try to, knock it out all in one day, but it's good to have another option as a way to get back home when I'm going to visit, other than flying. So,
Thanks, y'all. I think that leads us to our last participant question for the sake of time. And this individual is curious about navigating perhaps if any of you have dealt with some mental health struggles due to the change in weather, particularly if you've moved from somewhere really sunny, if anyone has experience with that and feels comfortable talking about that.
That is an incredibly relatable question for me. I think that is something I heard about. I definitely heard about coming here, the gloom, the seasonal depression you might get. I have struggled mentally in the past but I will say I don't think it was at all because of the weather. I think it was just me. But I will say I doubt, like, if you aren't going through things, I doubt that walking outside and seeing it gray is gonna help you. But I will say again, coming from SoCal, I appreciate the sun in Portland so much more. I think that it is gorgeous when it's out, and seeing like the greenery out here with its like rain-soaked leaves reflecting the sun is just absolutely gorgeous, and it is always a big mental health boost when it is sunny here. Um, I will say you're not going to go months without the sun. I think the longest I've gone without the sun here is like maybe a week and a half. We had a really dry winter, so like all of January didn't even have rain. And so you're not going to be inside called up for months. There are sunny days and they will come. Yeah, but I think coming specifically from SoCal, I would say if you're someone who does appreciate more that relativity of like maybe you don't appreciate the sun now, but you notice that like those days after it does, it does rain in SoCal once in a while. But if you notice that you do like the sun after that, that is a feeling that you'll get a lot in Portland, and it is absolutely wonderful. For me, seasonal depression specifically has not been a thing. I know some people here come from sunnier places like Hawaii or SoCal and do take vitamin D. Not a bad option at all. It can't hurt probably, not a doctor, but I will say that it's not been a thing for me or any of my friends from sunnier places, but yeah, I think in general it is a different change of pace that you'll have to get used to. Yeah.
I will say I did kind of struggle with that, especially for the first year. I think a lot of it was the transition, but also that kind of mental health struggle also runs in my family, so it makes sense. But I think the thing that it really taught me was appreciating winter as really a time of like rest and taking care of yourself. And that is like, I think coming from somewhere that didn't really have like seasons that were very much reflected in the weather and the trees and everything, the plants, um, I kind of had to learn what the point of winter was, if that makes sense. Like, the first year I really was like, oh man, it really sucks. Like it's so gray out most of the time, and like I haven't seen the sun in like, I don't know how long, and it's kind of making me sad and bummed out, and like I don't want to go to class because it's so gray out all the time. But then understanding that like as a part of the natural process of just the world, like in order to have all of this beautiful sun that we do in the summer, and all this like lush greenery, we also need to have the rain and the time of staying inside and making yourself a cup of tea and whatever. So yeah, I think more than anything, like as difficult as it is to kind of adjust to those weather patterns, and especially the like reflection on mental health, I think there's like secret lessons in there too that yeah, definitely makes me appreciate the sun a lot more.
Thank you, Maya. And thank you to all of our panelists. We are wrapping up on our time today, so I just want to thank you all for taking time to be here with us today. If folks continue to have questions about what it's like to be a West Coast student at Reed, y'all can reach out to write a Reedie at reed.edu. That's a great way to get in touch with some of these folks. And then I would say be sure to monitor the admissions website. We're hosting a lot of virtual events right now, including a lot of different faculty office hours and Q&As with Carnell and Audrey. Thanks all for being here. I so appreciate it, and I hope everyone has a good rest of their day.